How to perform Hajj, Mufti Umar Shafiq Hijazi. Summary in English. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. Hajj is an essential obligation in Islam, made mandatory in the 9th year of Hijra. The Prophet Muhammad, PBUH, performed Hajj in the 10th year, known as the Farewell Hajj. The Prophet, PBUH, performed Hajj Qiran, while most companions intended Hajj Ifrad. He instructed them to perform Tamattu as they were unaware of the correct procedures. There are 3 types of Hajj: Tamattu, Ifrad, and Qiran. In Tamattu and Qiran, both Umrah and Hajj are performed in one journey, whereas, in Ifrad, only Hajj is performed. Certain restrictions apply during the state of Ihram, such as not wearing stitched clothing, applying perfume, or hunting. Upon reaching Mecca, pilgrims perform Tawaf, followed by Sa'i between Safa and Marwah. Those performing Tamattu exit the state of Ihram and re-enter it on the 8th of Dhul-Hijjah. Pilgrims go to Mina on the 8th, Arafat on the 9th for supplication until sunset, and then to Muzdalifah for combined prayers and overnight stay. On the 10th, they perform the stoning of Jamrat al-Aqabah, sacrifice an animal, and shave or cut their hair, followed by Tawaf al-Ifadah. They perform stoning on the 11th and 12th and may stay for the 13th for an additional stoning. Before leaving Mecca, they perform the farewell Tawaf, completing the major rituals of Hajj. AI-generated translation in English. This is an AI-generated translation, thus it is prone to errors. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. Praise be to Allah, the Lord of all the worlds, and peace and blessings be upon his messenger, the trustworthy prophet, and upon his family and his noble companions, and those who follow them in goodness until the day of judgment. Hajj is an important obligation in Islam, which was made mandatory in the 9th year of Hijra. After it became obligatory, the Prophet, PBUH, performed one Hajj in the 10th year of Hijra, known as the Farewell Hajj. This was the first and last Hajj of the Prophet, PBUH, after it became obligatory. During this Hajj, many companions accompanied the Prophet, PBUH, in large numbers, and they had many questions during this journey. The Hajj performed by the Prophet, PBUH, was Hajj Qiran, while most of the companions intended for Hajj Ifrad. Later, the Prophet, PBUH, ordered them to perform Tamattu. Since this was the first Hajj, they did not know how to perform it. Before Islam, Arabs believed that one could not perform Umrah during the Hajj journey. There was only one type of Hajj, which was Ifrad, and they had no concept of Tamattu and Qiran. They thought that Hajj could only be Ifrad and that Tamattu or Qiran could not be performed, meaning Umrah could not be performed. The Prophet, PBUH, instructed the companions to perform Tamattu, so most of them performed Hajj Tamattu, while the Prophet, PBUH, himself performed Qiran. He took a sacrificial animal with him and said that if he had not brought the animal, he would have performed Tamattu like them. Although it is not mandatory to take a sacrificial animal for Qiran, it was common in those days for those performing Hajj to bring a sacrificial animal with them, whether they were performing Tamattu or Qiran. However, it is not necessary, and in today's times, the concept of bringing an animal with you has ended. Now, people buy the animal there and sacrifice it according to the official system. The companions performed Hajj Tamattu. There are 3 types of Hajj: Tamattu, Ifrad, and Qiran. Ifrad is for those who live within the Miqat, such as the residents of Jeddah, Bara, Juman, Uthman, and those living within the Miqat. For these people, Hajj Ifrad is mandatory. Those living within the Miqat cannot perform Tamattu or Qiran. They can only perform Hajj Ifrad. If they perform Tamattu or Qiran, they have to offer a sacrifice. The Prophet, PBUH, performed Hajj Qiran, traveling from Medina, while the companions performed Tamattu from Medina. For non-local people, Allah mentioned in the Quran, that is for those whose families are not in the vicinity of the sacred mosque, indicating that Tamattu is for those who do not live near the Kaaba. For those within the Mecca, they are considered to be living close to the Kaaba. Since the journey in those times was very challenging and took many days or even weeks, people who came from afar were given the facility to perform both Umrah and Hajj in one journey. In today's times, the journey has become very easy, but in those days, it was very difficult. For those who come from outside the Mecca, they can perform Umrah and Hajj together in one journey. In Tamattu, after performing Umrah, one takes off the Ihram and then makes the intention for Hajj. In Qiran, both intentions, Umrah and Hajj, are made together, and one does not take off the Ihram until both are completed. There is a benefit in performing Tamattu and Qiran, which is that one can perform Umrah first in one journey and then perform Hajj. Therefore, a sacrifice of gratitude is obligatory in Tamattu and Qiran, which is offered on the 10th of Dhul-Hijjah after throwing the stones, sacrificing the animal, and then shaving or cutting the hair, and one comes out of the Ihram. In Tamattu and Qiran, this sacrifice of gratitude is obligatory. In Ifrad, since there is no prior Umrah, there is no obligatory sacrifice. However, it is recommended to offer a sacrifice if it is one's first Hajj. For those living within the Mecca, Hajj Ifrad is designated, and they have no option to perform Tamattu or Qiran. They can only perform Hajj Ifrad. If they perform Umrah during the months of Hajj and then perform Hajj, they have to offer a sacrifice, as this becomes a form of Tamattu. Those living within the Mecca are not allowed to perform Tamattu or Qiran, and their sacrifice in Hajj is recommended but not obligatory. For non-local people, Tamattu and Qiran are more common, with Qiran being preferred by Imam Abu Hanifa as it was the type performed by the Prophet, PBUH. Imam Shafiq and others considered Tamattu to be better. In modern times, most people are advised to perform Tamattu because the rules for Qiran can be a bit more complex. In Qiran, if one makes a mistake in the state of Ihram, 2 sacrifices may be required. Therefore, while Qiran has its merits, it can also be challenging. It is advised for those who are not well versed in the rules of Qiran to perform Tamattu instead. Now, regarding how Hajj is performed and the procedures involved. Those who will be donning the Ihram for Umrah will also be doing so for Hajj. Everyone should don the Ihram at the Mecca or before it, especially those traveling by plane, who should don it before boarding. Those traveling by train from Medina should also don the Ihram before boarding, performing 2 rakas of Salah before donning the Ihram. It is advised to perform the Salah before boarding, as waiting for the announcement on the train can often result in missing the Mecca. If the announcement is delayed and the train crosses the Mecca, it can result in a penalty. Regarding the Ihram and the things to avoid during the state of Ihram. Wearing stitched clothing for men is prohibited. Men should not cover their heads or faces or wear shoes that cover the ankles or the top of the feet. Women should cover their heads but not their faces, and they can wear any footwear. Applying perfume or using scented soap is prohibited after entering the state of Ihram. Removing hair from the body and cutting nails are prohibited. Engaging in marital relations or any sexual activity is prohibited. Hunting or harming animals is prohibited. The restrictions of Ihram last until the major rituals of Hajj are completed, including Tawaf, circumambulation, and Sa'i, walking between Safa and Marwah. Upon reaching Mecca, the first ritual is Tawaf, which involves 7 circuits around the Kaaba. Each circuit starts and ends at the Black Stone. After completing Tawaf, one performs 2 rakas of Salah behind Maqam Ibrahim if possible. Then, the Sa'i between Safa and Marwah is performed, which involves walking 7 times between these 2 hills. After Sa'i, those performing Tamattu will cut their hair or shave their heads to exit the state of Ihram until they enter it again for Hajj. On the 8th of Dhul-Hijjah, known as Yawm al-Tarwiyah, pilgrims proceed to Mina and spend the day and night there, performing 5 prayers from Dhuhr to Fajr. On the 9th of Dhul-Hijjah, they proceed to Arafat after Fajr, spending the day in supplication and prayer until sunset. After sunset, they move to Muzdalifah, where they perform the Maghrib and Isha prayers combined and stay overnight, collecting pebbles for the stoning ritual. On the 10th of Dhul-Hijjah, they return to Mina for the stoning of Jamrat al-Aqabah, followed by the sacrifice of an animal. After the sacrifice, male pilgrims shave their heads or cut their hair, while female pilgrims cut a small portion of their hair. Then, they perform Tawaf al-Ifadah in Mecca, which is one of the pillars of Hajj, followed by another sa'i if performing Tamattu or Qiran. On the 11th and 12th of Dhul-Hijjah, pilgrims perform the stoning of the 3 Jamrat in Mina after Dhuhr each day. They can choose to leave Mina after the stoning on the 12th or stay for the 13th and perform the stoning once more. Finally, before leaving Mecca, pilgrims perform the farewell Tawaf, Tawaf al-Wada, which is the last obligatory act of Hajj. This concludes the major rituals of Hajj, and pilgrims are then free to return to their homes, having fulfilled one of the most important obligations in Islam.